Hello all and welcome to Stingray Tom's Florida and another Take 5 for Florida history. Today I'll be looking at the manatee as part of my series on Florida's official state symbols. This will be the 10th symbol I've covered, but don't worry, there's plenty left. Each is a standalone video. There's no need to watch the others before you watch this one. I do suggest that you view the introduction video linked here, since it gives an overview of the state symbols and how they were chosen. The manatee, or more specifically the West Indian manatee, is the state marine mammal, which is not to be confused with the state's saltwater mammal. That would be the dolphin, which I've covered in this video. This is a fossilized manatee vertebrae found a few years ago in the Withlacoochee River. It's estimated to be about 1 million years old, though manatees have been around for much longer than that. So this is my look at one of the most unusual mammals native to North America, let alone Florida. Enjoy! Now by unusual, I probably more mean unique, though I don't care to use that word in this context. Let's look at a few quick reasons why Florida's official marine mammal is so unusual. The West Indian manatee is one of only 3 living species of manatees, and other than the similar dugong, it's only distantly related to other mammals. Mammals began as land animals, and there's only 2 groups that successfully transitioned into fully marine animals, those being the whales and the manatees, though their common ancestor was alive some 30 million years before the event that caused the extinction of dinosaurs. Manatees are often called sea cows. That's partly because they're vegetarians. Interestingly, they're the only marine mammal that is an herbivore. This not only makes them unique among mammals, as far as I can tell, they're also the largest fully marine herbivore, since all large fish eat other fish or zooplankton. That the species has been successfully eating grasses for millions of years is truly remarkable. In 1975, the manatee was chosen by the Florida legislature to be an official symbol, in the same action that chose the dolphin, as well as the largemouth bass and Atlantic sailfish as the Florida's fresh and saltwater fishes, respectively. I've not been able to find out why the legislature chose this set of water animals in 1974. The Safe Drinking Water Act became a federal law in that year, but as the title suggests, it has little to do with animals. If you have an idea, let me know in the comments. Still, those 4 animals became the 8th through the 11th official symbols of the state. And as of 2022, there's a total of 30, 7 of which are aquatic or semi-aquatic. So let's look more closely at the manatee. Those of us in Florida have general ideas about it, while most Americans probably know almost nothing, especially since when it comes to the continental U.S., it rarely leaves the coastal waters and rivers of Florida and Georgia. It limits itself to those temperate areas because it can't tolerate colder conditions. The irony is that while it appears to be insulated with a layer of blubber the way many whales and dolphins are, it's actually not. The manatee's girth has more to do with its digestive system and buoyancy control. This means that in winter, water temperatures below 68 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 degrees Celsius can introduce cold-related distress and even death. While manatees have been spotted along the Texas coast and even as far north as New England, those sightings are limited to warm weather. Since they don't swim quickly at all, manatees can't really migrate the way some whales and dolphins do. They are found throughout the Caribbean as well, though genetic studies show that Florida and Caribbean manatees are subspecies, being divided by the Florida Straits. But it does mean that Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands have their own resident manatees. Being almost exclusively native to Florida waters, at least on the continent, puts it in rather rare company. The Florida panther, which I covered in this video, shares this distinction, though prior to European settlement of the southeast, panthers would have roamed much of the eastern continent. Indeed, of larger animals, manatees are unique in their range. As I mentioned, they are vegetarians or herbivores. They mostly feed on seagrass. They eat a wide variety of water plants, and if the water table is high enough, they will contentedly feed on non-aquatic grasses and leaves as well. Their appetite is massive in that they can regularly eat as much as 10% of their weight in plants every day. Their digestive system processes the food slowly using bacterial fermentation to break down the grass to collect its basic nutrients. This process is similar to cattle, giraffes, and camels, but they accomplish it with a large hindgut rather than through rumination. In this way, they're more similar to horses and elephants. By the way, that's why you don't see those two species, or manatees for that matter, chewing their cud. The breaking down process of cellulose happens near the end of the digestive system, not the start. Manatees have one of the more efficient digestive processes, which may have led to them being successful in the water. One thing to note is that in captivity, manatees are often given romaine lettuce as a significant part of their diet. As long as it's supplemented with other vegetation, it provides a healthy diet for manatees. Ironically, because of the sheer amount of food consumed, manatees are often one of the more expensive marine mammals to feed. Adult manatees can reach a length of 13 feet or 4 meters and a weight of 2,000 to 2,500 pounds or 900 to 1,100 kilograms, though a few have been seen that exceed 14 feet and 3,000 pounds. Because of this, they lack any natural predators. Crocodiles and alligators leave them alone, and there's little evidence that they're bothered by sharks. In the wild, they can reach the age of 50. While there's been relatively few kept that long in captivity, the significant standout was Snooty. Snooty was born in 1948 and lived nearly his entire life at the Bishop Museum in Bradenton until his death in 2017 at the age of 69. His death was an unfortunate accident, so we don't know how many years he could have lived. I mentioned that manatees aren't closely related to other mammals. In fact, the species with which they share the most recent common ancestor is the elephant, though that ancestor is believed to have lived 60 million years ago, not long after the dinosaurs' mass extinction. By comparison, the common ancestor of humans and chimpanzees lived only 6 million years ago. While elephants and manatees are obviously different, it's through their similarities that a further look at manatee anatomy can be explored. Firstly, think about your teeth. Assuming you're an adult, you're likely to have had 2 sets, and anyone who has lived with a teething child knows that human teeth push up through their gums. Nearly all mammals produce teeth the same way, but manatees and elephants are exceptions. Manatees have 6 to 8 molars located along each side of the upper and lower jaw, giving a total of up to 32 teeth. They're ground down rather quickly because of the roughness of their diet, but it's also thought that their tooth enamel is weak. Once the front molars wear out, they are shed and replaced by molars that were further back along the jaw. Think of it as a series of boxes along a conveyor belt. As the first one falls off the end, the next takes over the position, and in the rear a new tooth is created. It appears that the speed of this dental conveyor might be connected to the rate with which the molars wear out. This continues until death. The process is similar in elephants, though there are a couple of differences. Elephant teeth tend to drop out of their jaws in pieces. Also, elephants can replace their teeth only 4 to 6 times, and in old age they use up the last of their teeth. In fact, the loss of teeth is a common cause of death. Manatees don't have this issue. Comparing their skulls shows us more examples of their common ancestry. In this pair of images from the Skeletons Museum that was open a few years back in Orlando, you can see that there's 2 obvious similarities. That of the position of the eye sockets and the nasal passage. You might have heard of the story that suggests ancient Greeks came up with the idea of a giant cyclops, a one-eyed human-like monster, after seeing an elephant skull with the huge nasal passage located just below the forehead and the eye sockets almost hidden on the side. The manatee skull shares very similar features. The nasal passage is located up between the eyes in both animals, bringing up another similarity. While the elephant's remarkable trunk is unique in the animal kingdom, both snout and trunk are front-facing. For the manatee, this is a radically different structure than which the dolphins and whales have, with a center blowhole on the top of their head. While that position works well for cetaceans who are sleeker and faster, the manatee's snout is effective, as can be seen when watching the breathing process. Like a trunk, the snout is muscular and sticks out far enough that manatees are able to maneuver its nostrils and mouth to do what it needs. Also, like an elephant, the manatee's upper lip is prehensile. It's split down the center with separate muscles, and it's designed to easily grasp vegetation, whether on the bottom, along the shore, or even hanging down from above. There's two other interesting similarities. Firstly, I've mentioned that both animals have a hindgut, rather than a multi-chambered stomach, which cattle, giraffes, and camels possess. However, the big difference between manatee and elephant digestion is that the latter has a rather poor digestive system, while the manatee's works much better. For example, waste passes through elephants in about a day, while it takes 10 days for their distant aquatic cousins. That extra long time allows for bacteria to break down more cellulose and extract more nutrients. The other similarity has to do with nursing. Both manatee and elephant teats are located close to the armpits, next to either the front legs or the flippers, depending on the animal. Unfortunately, the population of manatees is notoriously difficult to count. You'd think it'd be fairly simple to determine the population of a large, slow-moving animal that swims in shallow rivers. Unfortunately, the rivers are opaque from constantly decomposing vegetation. The water isn't exactly dirty, but any place where manatees swim has a similar appearance to strong tea. Manatees typically sleep on the bottoms of rivers, coming up to breathe every 10 minutes or so. Experts argue that manatees have never had an accurate count. The Save the Manatee Club states that there was a minimum count of 5,733 animals in 2019, but that's really a best guess. As for where they're located, this map from 1969 shows what continues to be the more common haunts. Populations are concentrated at several rivers, including the ones listed, Swanee, Crystal, and St. John's, but also the Manatee River at Bradenton, St. Lucie at Stewart, the Peace at Punta Gorda, and the Caloosahatchee at Fort Myers. Note on this map, Fort Myers is misplaced. It should be next to the first O in Okeechobee. Punta Gorda is actually where Fort Myers is. These rivers are the most important part of their habitat. Not only is there tons of vegetation, it's easier for them to find secluded areas where they can forage and sleep. Generally solitary animals, they only interact with others occasionally through the day. Some of these rivers are also important for another reason. In winter, they are literally lifesavers. The spring water that feeds them pours out of fissures in the limestone at a constant temperature, around 72 degrees Fahrenheit or 22 Celsius. No matter how cold the air temperature is, springs are always that temperature. Oftentimes, hundreds of manatees congregate at the springs during cold snaps. Blue Springs State Park, which is located just off the St. Johns River, regularly reports counts of over 500 on the coldest days. This is a difficult time for them, since not only are they in danger from the cold, but the vegetation in those short spring runs is eaten bare by the large number of hungry manatees. For many years, cold stress has been one of the most common threats to manatees. Dozens of individuals die each year from it, though it's hardly the manatee's only threat. There are a few manatees in the state that don't have propeller scars from recreational boaters, and those are the ones lucky enough to survive such horrific encounters. Pollution and red tide also claim the lives of manatees each year. While it has been under the protection of the 1972 Marine Mammal Protection Act and the 1973 Endangered Species Act for nearly 50 years, saving the manatee takes a massive coordinated effort from federal, state, and local governments, the Save the Manatee Club, and rescue and rehabilitation facilities. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission lists Zoo Tampa, SeaWorld, Miami Seaquarium, Jacksonville Zoo, and Homosassa Springs State Wildlife Park as the 5 federally permitted acute care facilities that treat sick, injured, or orphaned manatees. These and other facilities, including the Bishop Museum in Bradenton and even the Living Seas attraction in Walt Disney World, also care for manatees once they're stabilized and await release back into the wild. Zoo Tampa states they've treated more than 430 manatees since their Manatee Critical Care Center opened in 1991. SeaWorld lists that they've rescued and rehabilitated more than 800 manatees. At this point, manatees are holding their own, but they are still heavily threatened throughout the state. Of course, protection of the manatee is a complicated issue, one that can't simply be solved, but at least scientists and environmentalists are working on it. Manatees aren't disappearing anytime soon, at least I hope so. The positive side is they have millions of fans in the state, and there's numerous places to see them whether you're a local or a tourist. Here's some of the best places to see them, both in the wild and in zoos and aquariums. When it comes to viewing them in the wild during warm weather, they can be seen in the rivers I've already listed, but you'll typically only see 1 or 2 occasionally. An interesting place to visit is the Manatee Viewing Center, connected with the Tampa Electric Power Station just off of Tampa Bay. They have an observation walk and education center, and while you'll only see manatees coming up to breathe, you'll see a lot of them. As I said earlier, on cold days, head to the parks that contain springs. The best are Homosassa Springs and Blue Springs State Parks, as well as the Crystal River National Wildlife Refuge. During the right conditions, you'll see dozens, if not hundreds, of manatees. The Florida zoos and aquariums that have manatees are Zoo Tampa, Homosassa Springs State Wildlife Park, SeaWorld in Orlando, Jacksonville Zoo, Miami Seaquarium, and the Bishop Museum in Bradenton. In reality, because of the clarity of the water and underwater viewing areas in most of these locations, watching manatees in these awesome facilities is the best way to better understand just how amazing the state's most unusual animal behaves. Thank you for watching another of my videos. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and remember to subscribe to learn more about Florida's tourism history. Stingray Tom's Florida, traveling through time around the Sunshine State.